Blog Talk Radio.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio on October 7th, 2015. This is your host, Andrew Fisher, broadcasting Wednesdays from the suburbs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to expose the true and false nature of reality for what it is and what it is not. Today on the show, Rob Gauthier. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. I believe this is him in the queue here, area code 269. I see a question mark next to that. There's two other people in the queue, by the way. If any of you are calling to speak to the guest, I'll be taking calls at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so don't hang up. If you want to take calls, I'll get you on. But anyway, the guest, Rob Gauthier, psychic ET channeler and meditator on a mission to awaken us all. Just a quick overview of his bio. He was blessed as a child with psychic abilities, but as he digressed, so did they. He started learning from the great psychics and learned many things, including many experiences that he had as a child, which were not figments of his imagination. He learned more meditations, and after a couple of years, he met an entity named Treb Bor, yit-NE, something like that, who explained that reality wasn't how he saw it and that there is so much more to the universe. He also told Rob he can take many newly found meditation abilities and use it to permanently remove that loneliness, and that there was so much more evolution in not just the physical ideas, meaning that of the soul. Since then, Rob built a relationship with this brother of space and feels duty to share the information Treb, Aridif, and the other entities he channels are willing to impart to humanity. He has been privy to new communications between new entities such as Aridif, the Ancient Pleiadian, Metatron, and more. He owns a radio station called the Enlightenment Evolution Network, and he invites Treb and Aridif on the first Wednesday of each month and whenever else he wants to connect. His website is etwhisper.com. That's etwhisper, etwhisper.com. This is basically an abridged version of his bio on the website that I would have loved to put the whole bio on here, but I couldn't because Blog Talk Radio is very picky with number of characters. But before I get him on, I will, as usual, start with the news courtesy of Alex Jones and Company at InfoWars. First article, not welcome. Large turnout set to protest Obama's Roseburg visit on Friday. Gun advocates accuse president of politicizing tragedy. Well, of course, he's trying to politicize the tragedy. He's part of, he's a puppet for globalists who want to disarm us so they can control us. That's why they staged Sandy Hook, the Oregon shooting, and all the rest of them. So, well, almost all the rest of them. Not everything is staged, but a large majority of them are. And so it's a good thing people are waking up to the fact that Obama is a tyrant because his masters want him to act like a tyrant. Next article, Drudge, why aren't we seeing Hillary's lovers? Media mogul Matt Drudge questions lack of investigative reporting on leading Democrat presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. Well, why aren't we seeing Hillary's lovers? Well, people are waking up to the fact that Hillary is an evil fraud. She is a Illuminati Grand Dame, a Satanist, and of course, I will never forget that moment in David Icke's Revelations of a Mother Goddess documentary when Arizona Wilder, a former Illuminati mind-controlled slave, said that when she was at Illuminati ceremonies, she got the chance to witness many political and corporate leaders shapeshift into human and reptilian form, and she said, quote, I saw Hillary Clinton before I knew she was Hillary Clinton. So, well, people that are aware of that are not going to love Hillary. No surprise there. Next article, update, Matt Drudge challenges Obama, give up your guns, hashtag disarm Obama. The news icon Matt Drudge calls on President Hillary to relinquish Secret Service protection. Yes, it's a good thing Matt Drudge is waking up to the lies and everything. I mean, the Drudge Report is nothing more than a conglomerate, a repository of many different news stories from different sources. However, it seems like Alex Jones and his friends at InfoWars are getting a lot of credit for by Matt Drudge, and the powers that be don't like that, so they try to censor Drudge Report, and people are waking up to that. And Alex Jones and Matt Drudge recently met up with each other. That's kind of strange because I remember Alex saying back in the day, I don't think I'll talk to Matt Drudge because it'll keep the good luck intact and whatnot. Well, I guess he eventually gave in and decided, okay, maybe I should meet the guy because maybe a meeting of the minds would actually do better than not meeting us. So whatever, that's up to him. That's up to Matt Drudge too, so I'm not going to debate that. Next article, France's Hollande, Muslim rift threatens, quote, total war, unquote. Hollande says political situation for Syria is overthrow al-Assad. Yes, France, being America's ally, so to speak, is going to want Assad to be kicked out of office in Syria so the New World Order can control Syria to a to a much greater extent than they did than when Assad was their puppet. They're getting kind of sick and tired of Assad being a new world order puppet that he is. He's not doing everything they want. So, but he's not giving in. He's not relinquishing power. So they do all sorts of things to kick him out. And now Francis Hollande, being a phony, is going to say that we got to kick him out. So I'm no fan of Assad, no fan of Hollande either, no fan of any political or corporate leader, but wake up to the fact that the powers that be want to kick out Assad so they can further their agenda for World War III, and we don't want that now, do we? Next article, supporter introduces Hillary in Iowa by declaring, quote, who cares, unquote, about the email and the Benghazi scandals. Set aside all that hoo-ha, he says. Well, who cares about the email, and what difference does it make about Benghazi, as Hillary would say? Well, it means a lot that she's involved in some sort of email scandal and tried to cover up Benghazi, which was so obviously a staged event, for lack of a better phrase. No coincidence that it happened on the, I believe that was the 11th anniversary of 9/11, yes, in 2012, when that incident in Benghazi happened, when the American embassy head was trying to keep Al-Qaeda, which the U.S. government publicly runs, from getting weapons, so they killed him, and it was obvious that they were trying to cover that up. Next article, Jesse Ventura says, I hope Trump destroys the GOP and Sanders, that's Bernie Sanders, he means destroys Democrats, unquote. It's time to break up the two-party dictatorship, Ventura says. Yes, it's time to break it up because it's really a one-party dictatorship as they're controlled by the same special interests. And Jesse Ventura did say that he wouldn't mind being Donald Trump's running mate. I will admit, folks, I haven't paid too much attention to all the debates and whatnot with the Democratic and Republican candidates. The whole thing about Jesse Ventura wanting to be Trump's running mate, I mean, Donald Trump, he's a very rich corporate figure. It seems like a lot of things he's fighting for seem like he's on the side of the little guy, and even though he's rich and wants Americans to have more freedom. But, I mean, is it possible that Donald Trump is an Illuminati puppet who is turning to the good side, and he wants to get rid of all the bad things that his Illuminati masters did? I mean, just like when former Pennsylvania Governor Tom Ridge was elected head of Homeland Security shortly after 9/11. The government staged 9/11. They elected him as the head of the Homeland Security. He eventually, after several years, decided to say, okay, I did not like being the head of Homeland Security. It's a fraud. It's designed to scare people. I was told to do things against my will. And it's like he was leaving the dark side to join the good side. Maybe Trump is doing the same thing. But then again, it's not really in the best interest, as some people like Mr. Katai, among others, would suggest, that we shouldn't have someone like Trump, as good as he may sound, a rich guy being the president. So better have a third-party candidate, I say. And Jesse Ventura, I think you should run as a third-party candidate and not be Trump's running mate. Loved your conspiracy theory show, by the way. That woke up a lot of people. Although Jesse Ventura, he is left-brained and closed-minded, no question there. Not stupid, though, but left-brained and closed-minded nonetheless. Next article, New York Governor Cuomo wants Democrats to shut down government over Second Amendment. All other political issues are, quote, a blather, Cuomo says. Well, of course, he's anti-Second Amendment. I already said what the government wants about getting rid of the Second Amendment to inflict tyranny upon us. So let's act like we understood that the Founding Fathers put the Second Amendment in the Constitution so that we can have the right to protect ourselves from tyrants in government, and act like we understand that if we lose the Second Amendment, we lose everything. And since I have the E.T. Whisperer on the show today, it makes sense to point out that Alex Collier did say back in the 90s that his ET contact said if we lose the Second Amendment, we lose everything, even the ETs, even though they are peaceful and like love and may not necessarily support guns. They understand that, hey, in the end, guns protect you from tyrants, so let's, even though you may be anti-gun, act like you understand that some people have the right to have them to protect themselves from tyrants. All right, last article. Police arrest man for going over 3-minute talk time at council meeting. Mike Hansen handcuffed after complaining about federal takeover of local cops. I wonder if he was talking about another subject other than the federal takeover of the local police, he would have been arrested. Something tells me he wouldn't have. But speaking of getting arrested by cops, or more specifically kidnapped, I'll get the guest on, and I'll try to make this very short, but just for those of you that were thinking about me and all, or even if you weren't thinking about me, I did make it clear that during that lunar eclipse on the 28th of September, I was going down to Arizona to participate in a peyote ceremony. That, of course, never happened because I was pulled over by the police in Arizona in my rental car that I rented from Alamo. I mean, I knew that transportation laws only apply to those who are using the roads for commercial purposes, so I tried using Eddie Craig's transportation stop script when the police pulled me over. The cop, being the ignorant, stupid, jerk asshole that he truly was, he didn't appreciate that, so he grabbed me out of the car, handcuffed me, kidnapped me, took me to an Arizona jail, which I spent 30 hours in, had due process violated at every turn. I called into the Rule of Law radio show on Thursday, Friday, this past Thursday, this past Friday, and this past Monday. Randy Kelton was the host on Thursday and Friday. Eddie Craig, the host on Monday. I was the first caller on all three shows. You guys can listen to those if you want on the archives of logosradionetwork.com. That's LOGOS radionetwork.com. Click on the archives tab. You'll find those shows. This past Thursday, this past Friday, and this past Monday, I was the first caller in those shows, talked about my situation. Randy Kelton told me these are the documents you should file with the federal courts in Pennsylvania. Also sent some documents to the prosecutor down in Maricopa County, Arizona. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this, but you guys can listen to that to hear what I did. I did not show up for my arraignment hearing this past Tuesday in Arizona, so even though there may be a warrant for my arrest at this moment, Randy Kelton assured me, don't worry about that. They're not going to come after you, and actually, by law, they are supposed to rescind that warrant as soon as they get all the paperwork that you filed. So if there still is a warrant for my arrest and the court's got my paperwork, well, folks, no reason to think little of me. That warrant should be rescinded. If the courts don't, then the courts are not doing their job. And, well, anybody who's listened to people like Rod Klassenol and what he tried to do, you know the courts are going to violate their laws and public policy at every turn when the common people try to file documents with them. So even Randy Kelton said, don't worry if the courts just ignore your documents, Andrew. That's not really the point. You want to try to make some sort of a deal here. So I'm going to keep in touch with Rule of Law Radio, try to update you guys as I host this show. What really sucks about this, though, I kind of got to be careful and all, unfortunately, because if I get pulled over or something and they identify me, then if they run a warrant check, they may find that, even though that warrant should be rescinded. The assholes in Arizona are not going to do that. So, unfortunately, I got to play it kind of safe at this moment, even though I try to live my life free. But don't worry about me, folks. I know my angels and guides are with me. I have reason to believe that they're with me because some things actually happened after my arrest that were basically signs that my angels and guides were with me and supporting me. So just pray for me. Don't worry about me. The show will go on as long as it has to. I don't think anything's going to happen to me. And in the end, this case should eventually get dropped if I just follow Randy Kelton's instructions. So enough blathering about me. I'm already 2 minutes behind schedule in regards to getting the guest on. So area code 269. Is this Rob Gauthier?
This is Rob. How are you doing, brother?
Oh, I'm doing all right. Well, could be better, could be worse. You just obviously heard what happened to me down in Arizona if you weren't aware of that. But then again, I did nothing wrong. This is all the police and the court's fault. So let's not worry about that anymore. Let's not think about that. We got some far more important things to discuss. By the way, first of all, I said I would get the pronunciation on your last name right. How is it pronounced?
All right, so this is a French name, but in the United States, most people call it Gauthier. That's what I was raised saying. That's how I referred to it, but it's pronounced Gauthier, Gauthier, all sorts of different fun spins on that one. That's a rough one. Imagine me in kindergarten trying to learn to spell that thing.
Yes, and I was actually you were suggested by some Facebook friend of mine. God, I feel so ashamed of myself. I should remember who the Facebook friend I had who suggested you was. It's somewhere in my messages. Don't have time to check now, but maybe on the next week's show I'll try to remember to acknowledge who that was that suggested you. So you seem like a pretty popular guy. I see 3 different people here in the queue, and I'll try to get them all on. And 4 guests. They're all guests, though. They're not going to be able to chat in the chat room, but a lot of people seem to be interested to hear what you have to talk about. So I guess since you're the kind of guy that had childhood experiences with this kind of stuff, I think it only makes sense at this point for me to give you the floor to talk about how, as a child, you were blessed with psychic abilities and your experiences as a child up until this age that you think are worth sharing that'll basically set the stage for the rest of this interview. Also talk about how, as you digressed, so did your psychic abilities. I know that's kind of disappointing to talk about, I'm sure, but it kind of has to be talked about and all. So tell us all about what happened as a child with these metaphysical and psychic abilities and up until the present day, your life story in regards to this. You got the floor.
All right, brother, and thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm very, very grateful to be here. Grateful to co-create with you and all the people who are listening. So let's start off with a childhood story. I was very young, probably in between the ages of 5, 7. I remember that I had a very great ability to be able to kind of drown out background noise. And when I would get ready to sleep, or when I laid down and was told I had to go to sleep, I was able to eliminate every sound around me, and I would get in this deep state where I was almost in a dream state, but I was not quite there. I was able to make everything around me go quiet and just focus in on kind of myself. And I never really had considered anything about that. I thought that was a normal experience. And I kept getting older, and one night I had my great-grandmother come in, and she had talked to me, and I thought this was a dream. I'm looking, and I hear this experience and talking about my mother and her as a kid and all these things, and I had never met this grandmother specifically, but she told me a bunch of details about my mom, things that I knew were true, things I didn't know if they were true, and I went and talked to her the next night, and when I talked to her, she said, no, it's got to be a dream. Yes, those things are right, but it must have been you've heard me talk about them with my sisters or with your dad. So they always kind of just shut that down. And it's normal. Parents listen to their kids, and they're like, oh, these kids have imagination. My partner, fiance, Kalina Angel, who also does a radio show on our network, she had a lot of childhood experiences, and it often goes through that experience to parents and adults in the neighborhood or communities, and they always assume that because it's from the mouth of a child, it's just imagination or a dream or something like that. So I continued to go through that, and as I started getting older, I built more resistance. I had a very rough teenage years. I grew from teenage into a young adult where I had my son. My son was born with a lot of special needs. He has cerebral palsy. He's not able to eat by himself, drink. Right now he's 16. He's in a wheelchair. I have to change his diapers, bathe him, feed him. So this is the level of severity of his problems. And a lot of things happened when I was a kid, and there's a laundry list of too much to go through to really explain all of the things, but the one with my grandmother was definitely the most vivid and most memorable. So as I'm going through these disconnected years as a teenager, I start hanging out with people who were violent. They were hanging out with gangs, so there was a lot of violence in that, and I pulled myself away from that. And the more I grew up and the more I was told by all the people around me, what you're experiencing isn't real, the more I accepted that as a part of my reality. Well, it wasn't just these things. My mother, my father, I grew up in a very, very traditional Christian home. So when you tell a very fundamental Christian that you've seen someone who had died and, they were a spirit and talking to you, naturally they assume one of two things, a child imagination or, it can't be a spirit because people go to heaven or hell when they die. So there was a ton of resistance around me. I went to church with my parents the whole time, all the way up until I was 13 or 14 and started kind of going the other way. And what I was taught was a lot of things that didn't make sense, a lot of things that didn't resonate, but some things that did. And every time I tried to figure out those missing cues, I would go to the church deacon or the pastor or one of my friends' parents who were there at the church, and I would talk to them, and I would always get these answers that just didn't feel right for me. Why does God have the commandment that says it's okay to have a slave? A lot of people look at the Ten Commandments and they think those are just the Ten Commandments, but there was over 100 of them written, and one of them talked about acceptance of slavery. So I would ask these people, hey, why did God give a commandment that said it's okay to own slaves? And they would be like, oh, well, slavery was different back then, it's not the same as you think, la, la, la. And they would always push my corner to the side or just ignore it altogether. So that really helped push away those experiences I had, and a lot of what they were telling me didn't really resonate, but I just accepted it. I had to trust in the people who I believed were in authoritative positions to just accept what they said. Just like in school, you go to school, teacher, how come this isn't this? Well, it's just this way, so you accept it, and that becomes a part of your truth and your reality, even if it doesn't feel right. And I think all of us can understand that and feel that. So I go through, and then back to my teenage years, and then my son. And when my son was born, that was a very huge experience. I didn't know how handicapped my son was until he was about 2. That's when I really started getting depressed. I had this kid, he had all these physical problems and ailments, and I just became depressed. I felt sorry for him, I felt sorry for myself, I felt sorry for his mother, and all of these things were just going through my mind and my heart. And I lived like that in the deepest and darkest depression of most people that I know. When I talk to people about their dark times, they share their story, and I always feel like my story had a bit more of integration into that darkness. I was a very violent person, a very strong-willed person, a very angry and disconnected and depressed person. And that lasted for probably a good 7 or 8 years after that. And I don't know what cued this, but just stepping back from that lifestyle, getting away from the partying, doing all of those things, I started getting some space between myself and my perception. As I did, a lot of things from my childhood came back to me, things that I had ignored and pushed to the side for a long time. I wanted to know what was beyond death. I wanted to know what was beyond the physical body, and I felt that the church did have some answers for me. And I always denounced the church. I never liked it. I had a really bad experience as a child where the pastor had choked me and threw me against the wall, and that's when I quit going to church. So I said maybe it was just one bad guy, one bad time. We're all human. We make mistakes. So I tried to find a reality where there was a church who believed in God, because I always believed that there was someone or something that created everything around us, and I wanted to believe in that. But I also believe that it's not as black and white in the church as they say. You just don't go to heaven or hell. There are spirits and ghosts, and it's been documented through decades. As a child, I would study those types of things. So I wanted to find a thing, and I ended up looking around, and I found this church called a spiritualism church. Some people call it a spiritualist church. Now, this church represents the integration of both certain Judeo-Christian policies, well, to lack of a better thing to call it, integrate some of that, but also an openness, an understanding of an expansive version of God, which allows people not just to go to heaven or hell. It allows the spirit essence of people and to connect to that. Now, the actual whole concept of that entire church, and this is what really drew me in, we want to be able to communicate with people who have passed. If we're able to communicate with them, we can prove the existence of both God and the existence of afterlife. I was sold right there. I had seen psychics on TV. I was very skeptical with a lot of them. Some of them were so amazing, I had to take that question mark away from my mind. So I jumped in. And when I jumped in with both feet. I started going to the church that was local. I met this guy from the church who I really communicated with and liked, who I had met from one of the Facebook pages that they ran. So me and him talked for a couple months, and I never gave him my backstory. I never really told him about me. I just told him I was on a journey, and I wanted answers. And he would spend more time talking about the church to me than anything. And through this communication and connection, I developed a friendship with him. So he brings me into the church, and the very first day I step into the church, the person who's in charge, the preacher, minister, whatever title they gave him, was a trained psychic. Now, with this church, you have to be a certified medium in order to run a church. And there's one local place in the entire country that certifies mediumship for this church specifically, and it's called Lilydale, and it's in New York. And some of you might have heard the documentary HBO. They actually had something about Lilydale. So if you type in Lilydale HBO, you can really get an idea of what the church was about. So I went there. This guy's a psychic, a medium. He gave me a reading that was spot on. Some of the things he said didn't make sense. It was about generations back, and he said, long ago in your family, this happened. So the things he did know that he had no way of knowing, none of that stuff was on my Facebook to the public. Only my friends could see it, and even the guy who the church who I developed a friendship with wasn't my friend. So there was no way they could see things about my son or about certain aspects of my life that I didn't share publicly. So this thing was real. It hit me right in the heart. And everything that I couldn't figure out what they were talking about, the generations past, I would come back and I talked to my dad, who is an amazing, amazing steward of our family lineage. He is a person who's run family trees all the way back to the 1200s. And he has an amazing knowledge of our family history. And I asked him about some of these things, and he told me the two stories I couldn't pick up from this reading. He explained to me, and he told me exactly what it was and exactly what had happened. So I'm sold. I'm all in at this point. This guy nailed it. The first time, no way of knowing this, he nailed it. So I go there, and I tell the guy, my friend, after the service was over, it's a multi-part service. The first part, before that service started, I connected to him. I got the reading. The second part, they ran through some chakra meditations. And then after that, I said, hey, I want to do this. I wished I had the ability to be able to do what that preacher did. And the guy says, you can. Everybody can. You just have to practice. You have to meditate. You have to learn how to dig into yourself. So I said, beautiful, beautiful. How do we do it? And he goes, stay after service. We're all having a group meditation. Now, some of you might know the Spiritualism Church from their old times in the late 1800s and early 1900s. These are the people who talked about plasma that would come out, and they had photography back in the 1800s that would show this plasma stuff coming out of people's mouths or into someone's mouth as they integrated these consciousnesses with them. Now, I didn't know what the term channeling was back then. I had no clue what was going on with channeling. But essentially, that's what these people were doing. They were connecting to a consciousness and allowing it to connect to them, and the entity or being would speak through their physical body, and that's what channeling is. It's two entities that connect on a soul level, and the other entity is able to combine and facilitate conversations through the physical being who's connecting with them. So I didn't know what channeling was. I didn't care. I seen these pictures. I thought it was great, and I kept learning, and I meditated, and I got good. I would meditate so much during the day and use all these wonderful techniques. But months went by, and I started seeing a lot of things I didn't like. I left the fundamental religion for a reason, because there were spats and arguments and fighting and internal conflict and all of these horrible things that I didn't like in the first place, and that's what pulled me back. Well, the biggest point of contention in that church is whether reincarnation existed. Now, for me, I'm looking at it like, hey, this is an organization that's spread throughout the entire world. There are spiritualist and spiritualism churches literally all around the globe. You got them in New Zealand, Australia, and Europe, and the U.S., even in parts of Western Asia. So all of this world has these churches, but they can't agree on something as important as reincarnation. And I said that was, and there would be real arguments in the church, after the church, between church, where they would really fight about this, and it turned me off of wanting to go. So I started separating from the church, and I backed away from it completely, but I stayed in contact with my friend. I kept meditating, and pretty soon I would get little things, and they weren't nothing, it wasn't anything that was spectacular by any means. It wasn't anything mind-blowing or even worth mentioning, but it would be something like little pictures or words, things that I really didn't have a way to know until I really brought it up. And then all of a sudden, I hit a plateau. I couldn't get any more than just a little picture here, a little word there, or an idea or a concept that would go through. So I searched for different means. Now, I don't have the church people anymore, besides my friend. He's taught me everything he could. So I went out to the internet, and I found this thing called binaural beats. And what it is are sound tones that are put into different ears to synchronize the waves of your brain, to allow the brain to synchronize energetically so that you can take yourself into the bigger states of consciousness. Our mind runs at a certain level, and that's basically white noise. It's frustration, it's anger, it's annoyance, it's inability to focus. That's how most people's brains run. But these binaural beats would take you to what they call the delta and theta states of consciousness. That's where your physical mind vibrates at a different level, where they could take a brain scan and it shows the activity of the brain increasing exponentially. And through that, I was amazed. So I started looking into it, and I found one of the most infamous or famous ones of them all, and it was the Hemisync Gateway experience from the Monroe Institute. Robert Monroe is the one who really originated all of the information of binaural beats. The gateway experience, it was touted to be one of the greatest journeys where people can leave their body, where people can remote view, where people can connect to their higher selves. All of these great things that are talked about. So I dug in, and I went through the whole thing in about 4 months, and it was intense. I had OBEs, out-of-body experiences. I had astral projection states where I'm literally taking my consciousness and putting it into other places. I had visualizations of different places in our solar system, like Mars. I was able to see Mars from a different view and actually be able to look at it. So all of these really exciting and great things, but they never were super expansive. It would only last for a few minutes. It would only last for a couple seconds here and there, and I enjoyed it. It became like a drug to me. I was addicted to meditating. Now, once I started feeling this great jump in my ability to meditate, I stopped completely doing most of the things in my life. I still kept my job. I still kept my relationship. I still took care of my son, but I spent all of my spare time meditating. Now, these instructed gateway experiences are actually only about 45 minutes to an hour and 10 minutes long. I would do 2 or 3 a day, and then I developed another technique where I just closed my eyes and started listening to sound. And I would turn the vibration of sound into vibration of energy and being able to perceive energy. I did this for 4 months, this one program, and I was at the top level. I felt like I had just been amazingly whooshed through the greatest secret or the greatest shortcut for consciousness integration. So I kept doing these, and I kept playing around with them, getting the best parts of what they taught, teaching myself little things here and there. And together with my closed eye technique and the Hemisync gateway experience, I was able to bring that meditation to that huge level. Now, I kept doing this for over a year, and as I'm doing this, I'm getting no more experiences. I plateau again. I'm at all these great experiences, but they're very short-lived. They're very small in comparison to what I believed I was able to do. So, although I originally intended to use my meditation to see what was on the other side, the feeling of it became so intense, the desire to be in that state all the time instead of in my brain that was just coming out of this horrible depression for so long, that felt addictive to me, and I just lived in it. And when I finally said, one night I got so depressed and so upset, I was watching this video, and it was about the Hubble Deep Field, and it was a 3D model of the Hubble Deep Field. I've always had an affinity for space. I loved anything astronomy. I've always had that desire and burning in my heart. Never knew why. I just accepted it and went with it. One night I looked at that video, and it made me so upset, and I couldn't place why I was upset. I felt like I was on this beautiful planet because coming out of that depression into this consciousness, I could see the beauty in everything. This beautiful planet, but it felt like I was trapped here. It felt like even though I can see things outside the planet, I'm still stuck on this beautiful prison planet. And that's how my mindset was. So I get into really deep crying, and it lasted 20 minutes. And I decided I'm going to step out and I'm going to neutralize myself. I'm going to try to bring myself back down to relax and to let this not shake me or not bother me anymore. So as I'm doing that, I'm meditating and I'm thinking to myself, I want to go beyond where I'm at. I want to go beyond the 21 state, and the 21 state is a step in the gateway experience. That's the last place of consciousness where you're able to connect with other things and yourself and the higher vantage point of view of your soul and consciousness. And I said, let's do that. I pushed beyond, and I went beyond 21. In my mind, there's a counting process with the technique, and I went beyond the 21. And when I did, I literally was instantly in this area that pretty much looked like a futuristic waiting room in a doctor's office. And I know it sounds kind of a little crazy, but it's the only way I can describe it. There was silver places to sit and to stand, monitors everywhere. I was sitting in this chair, and it was gorgeous. And I looked at it, and I was in awe. This wasn't like any meditation I'd ever had before. Every meditation I had before, I would get glimpses. I would see certain things, but I didn't always have all of my senses about me. Like, for example, one of the out-of-body experiences I had before this, I was able to see outside the vantage point from Mars, but I could only see and I could only feel. I couldn't hear. I couldn't touch. I couldn't bring all of my physical senses with me there. But this was just as real as I'm sitting here talking in the microphone to you. It was that real. It was like my physical body was there. I sit there and I'm wondering what is going on, but it's really exciting but kind of freaky, a little bit odd to me. And I'm sitting and I look at the sign, and it's written in a language I've never seen before, but after looking, it kind of started to make sense to me. I started understanding what it was written as. And it's basically saying something to the effect of, when you're here, just stay seated, someone will be with you, or something to that effect. Like I said, it sounded like a futuristic waiting room for a doctor's office. And this sign became clear to me, and I kind of chuckled, like, wow, I'm having this really weird experience, hallucination, whatever it is. I'm having this, and I would choose to be in a doctor's office. That's great. So I sit there and I wait. And all of a sudden, the door behind me, in the corner of my left eye, I see this door slide open. And in walks the most menacing, largest, dominating type of physical body I'd ever seen. And my heart skipped. It's this big blue-green entity with these large teeth, these gigantic purple eyes, red dots all over themselves, really scaly sin. And I look at this being, and my heart drops, and it's very fearful, very scary. Within a matter of seconds, it's like the fear instantly vanished. It was like it was completely gone from my essence. I felt a sense of love that I had never felt before that. And mind you, I had this beautiful son who I loved with all of my heart. The only person, in all honesty, in the world I ever loved more than myself. And that energy was so much more powerful than my love, even for my son. And I felt this love to me. It wasn't me loving everything around me. It was something loving me. And it was so intense and so stuttering, but it calmed me. All of my nerves, all of my feelings of fear were gone. This entity or being, I call them entities, that's the verbiage I was taught, came towards me. And I talked to him just for a few minutes. It was very basic. Who are you? I'm an entity who is connected to you. I'm a being who is connected to you. We talked just for a few minutes, and I said, why am I here? Why are we talking? And this being said, you and me are connected for a reason. The things that you think that you know about reality are not the way that you understand them. There's so much more to how this universe works and how these energies are supposed to be seen. And you have it. That's what our connection's for. So, mind-blowingly, very short, I got pulled away. And when I did, I was scared. Although I felt the love, although I felt great calmness in his presence, I was fearful when I got back. I don't know if I just hallucinated. I don't know if I had a rupture in one of my brain veins. I didn't know if I had an aneurysm. I didn't know if I just had snapped and went insane. It was very, very intense. And you remember me saying I used to meditate 2 or 3 times with the hemisync. That means at least 3 hours, plus my closed eye meditation, sometimes up for 4, 5, 6 hours a day. So I could be meditating 9 hours in a day, and that was normal to me. But I did not meditate for 3 days. I was afraid that I would have a similar or worse experience than that. And I didn't see it as a horrible experience. I just seen it as something that was so different, I could not make sense of it. So I went back. 3 days later, I could not handle anymore. I had thought of questions that I would have never thought in this being's presence. I went back and I connected to him, and he shared a lot more with me. He shared about himself, about his race, about who he was. He shared a lot of information. And I went back to see him a few more times after that. Every day I would jump back in and I would talk to him. And after we had talked for a little bit, a few days, I asked him, how do I know that you're real? How do I know that my brain didn't blow up? How did I know that there's not something mentally wrong with me? He said, go talk to your friend. And it's an old friend of mine, Scott. He said, go talk to Scott. Don't mention our connection or our talks, but talk to him. And something will lead you to understanding our connection. So I said, okay, what would this hurt? I might be going crazy, but what would it hurt? So I called Scott, and I hadn't talked to him for a few days. And I said, what's new in your life? What's going on? Well, he's always been a UFO guy, always loved. Like, he would be the guy that would watch the specials with the ghost and all the things when we were kids with me. He was a Bigfoot guy, cryptozoology. I mean, he loves all that stuff. So he sent me this UFO video. And in this UFO video, there was 5 minutes out of the whole couple hours that this show was. There was 5 minutes that talked about channeling. And they talked about two channelings, the raw material from the 1980s. And that's what they talked about the majority of the time. There was one other channeling mentioned. It was only mentioned for just a split second. Their actual part that they said was, these raw material channelings are second only to Jane Roberts and the Seth material. And that's all they said about the second channeling. That was the only words that they muttered. So I, for some reason, locked into that little part more than I did the whole 5 minutes they were talking. Most normal people would have said, well, I was told to talk to this guy, I got this experience, they were talking a lot about the raw material, they would have checked it out, but something in my gut said, go and check out that Jane Roberts Seth material, and I did. When I looked at that information, what this entity called Seth, who came through this woman called Jane Roberts, said was exactly what this being was saying to me, just in completely different terms. You hear a story from two different people about the same event. They tell it so drastically different, but in the energy, in your mind and in your heart, you know it's the same story, and that's what happened. This entity who told me his name was Treb Bor, yit-NE, which now I shorten it to Treb. It's a lot easier. Treb told me to check that out, and when I did, it was so connected and so deep, right then allowed me to start letting go of if this was a real experience or not. So I spent the next 2 years every day visiting Treb. I would go to his race. I met a bunch of people. Now understand, when I say I go to, my physical body didn't jump in a ship and leave. I would go into a meditative state, and I would astral project. And for some people who don't know what that is, basically, you have 7 chakras in your body. Each one of them are a focal point of energy for your emotional and energetic connection. So your non-physical body is connecting to your physical vessel, and the way it experiences things is through these 7 chakras. The first chakra is the basic root chakra. It's the parts of your life that just exist, where you feel safe, where you have a sense of belonging in the community that you're in. That's the first, and each chakra means something different. But astral projection is where you use your chakra system and you go to the top chakra, which is your crown chakra. It's, if you ever seen a Jewish person of the Jewish faith wear their yarmulkes, then it's the same exact spot. It's on the back part of your head. That's the crown chakra. And when you're using meditation, you can move through your chakra system into your crown chakra and release the entire essence, or the majority of the essence of your consciousness, out of your physical body. This is how people remote view. This is how people astral project. This is what we do every night in sleep states. I was being able to do that in meditation. It's something I taught myself with the Gateway experience and my own meditation techniques. So I would go back in the same way through meditation and visit him every day, and we continued to connect for 2 years, and he taught me so much. As much as my life changed in the very first time from disconnecting myself from my tragedies in life, my depression, my frustration and rage, as much as my life changed from there to before I met Treb, it changed twice as much after I met Treb. He taught me how the universe works. He taught me how consciousness works. He taught me your soul and the evolution. He taught me about myself. He taught me about physics. He taught me about all of these amazing things that are happening outside of Earth in the galaxy. He taught me about different races. He showed me a lot of these things. When I would connect to him, he would show me different planets, different beings, different ways of life, and he would show me certain things on his planet. He would show me the negative beings who are fighting wars and killing each other. All of these things he showed me. I would ask him and he would show me. 2 years I learned from Treb. 2 years I gained a great wealth and treasure trove of information and ideals, and it changed my life, black and white, day to night. It changed my entirety. At that end of the 2-year process, I looked at Treb and I said, listen, I want to share this with other people. I want others' lives to be able to change in the way that my life has changed, in the way that I perceived my life. And just twisting how we perceive changes the entirety. And he taught me, the main thing that he taught me was that we create our own reality. And a lot of people talk about the matrix, and this matrix, and our non-physical bodies are projecting into the reality. And that's exactly what he explained to me. And it's very complex how it works. There's so many details about the way consciousness integrates the physical reality. But the bottom line, we create our own reality. How powerful is that? I wanted to share that. A lot of people look at the law of attraction with very doubting eyes. The majority of people who teach this publicly go out into the public and say, law of attraction, find yourself a way to get a new car. That's not what the law of attraction is about. It can be, but that's not all it is. Basically, the law of attraction shows you how your thoughts and beliefs and all of this can change the reality around you. Like, literally, it's making that reality around you. This was something that was so important. I had to teach others, but I needed the benefit of Treb's knowledge. I knew a lot, but 2 years of learning did not compare to the amount of knowledge this being was teaching me. I seen it was possible. When he told me that he was real and showed me how to find he was real, it led me to channeling. Even though I had seen channeling before, I didn't know what it was until I seen Seth and Jane Roberts. I know that is possible. Teach me. Can we do that? And he said, yes. So I worked with him, and he taught me, and I went out actively seeking people who specifically channeled, not just psychic mediums, but people who specifically channeled entities. The more extraterrestrial they were, the better I felt about it. A guy named Win Free, he wrote the book about David Wilcock being the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. I talked to him, and I learned a lot from that guy, and he taught me a lot about channeling. And he helped me, and Treb helped me, and all these other people who I talked to helped me. And finally, I tried, and when I tried, it worked. I was able to put myself in a meditative state, to have my consciousness leave my physical body, and for Treb's consciousness to come into my physical body. So now, this being, Treb, comes into my body and speaks his own thoughts, his own words, through my physical body, and I co-create that with him. And I instantly knew it was possible, and as soon as it happened, I instantly fell in love with the idea of being able to take this information out and share it with people. And I worked. Now it's been 7 or 8 years, and there's so much that's changed since then, and I guess we'll talk about that a little later, but when this happened, I worked for the first 4 years of my channeling, just helping people. Anybody who wanted a channeling session, I would connect with them. I would put out all the videos on YouTube so that people had access to that knowledge. I could not stop sharing this information. Now, through the evolution of the last 7 years, so much has changed. My original channelings were not great, in my opinion. They were powerful, they were correct, they were good, but channeling is not like a lot of people think it is. It's not a science, it's an art. You have to work with yourself. You have to work with your own thoughts, your own filters. Now, I'm what they call a deep trance channeler. That means when I'm channeling, when Treb or Aridif or Metatron or any of these entities come through my physical body, I'm actually not even there. I don't know what's being said. I don't know what the conversation is. My consciousness is up visiting Treb. And well, most of the time. Sometimes it's different, but 99% of the time, me and Treb are hanging out. We're talking. He's down with a part of himself in my physical body, communicating and taking questions from people and sharing his own information. So as I go through in the 7 years after, I begin to connect to another entity. Now, this entity is just like Treb's guide. Like, Treb is kind of like one of my guides. So Treb's guide is Aridif, and he's an Ancient Pleiadian entity. And even before that, Treb would connect me with all these different beings from different races around the galaxy, and people would talk to them and get information. We wrote a book that we gave away for free to everyone who wanted to read it. It's still out there on the website, it exists, and it's about Treb, his race, and all of the people their race is connected to. So we have Aridif, which was Treb's guide. We also have all these different races who brought representatives to speak. So we go through, and all of these different entities connect to me. And now we are where we are now. And I've taken the name E.T. Whisperer because not just my connection to Treb or Aridif, but because since I started channeling 7 years ago, I have connected to over 100 ET consciousnesses via my own channeling state. That is why it's the ET Whisperer. It's not just Treb or Aridif. It's not just Ancient Pleiadian or Capellan or the Yits. It's actually a whole trove of all of these entities across the galaxy. And that is what I do. That's what I do now. I share my work. I put the information out. That is my entire journey in a nutshell. And I know I was way long-winded for that, brother, and I apologize. But that's kind of the story, you know.
No need to apologize at all. You did an excellent job of playing a primary source. There are times where it's great to give your guest the chance to explain his life story for the sake of getting out information, and that was definitely one of those situations. But with that being said, you set the stage for the rest of this interview. We got about another hour and 10 minutes. There's this guy in the queue, 1111111, one of those strange numbers, who had a question mark next to his name. He called in twice, hung up twice. When the question mark means he wants to talk to you, I don't know why he keeps hanging up again. Maybe he'll call in again, but then again, I won't be taking calls until 7:15 Eastern time, which is in about 23 minutes. So until then, got some questions. You said meditating for 9 hours a day. Well, a couple of things about that. I mean, people like Mark Passio in his presentation, 7-hour masterpiece presentation, New Age Deception and Suppression of the Sacred Masculine, it's titled something to that effect. He explains you can't expect to save the world going out into nature and sitting on a rock in the middle of the creek and meditating for 9 hours in a row and radiating love from your heart chakra in this matrix. You gotta be active, and you gotta talk about things publicly that sheeple would find scary. But then again, when you're meditating and spreading love from your heart chakra, well, you're still doing society a favor. Don't get me wrong. It's just that he's acknowledging you can't go strictly love-based in this matrix. You got to use a little variety there. So, I mean, meditating for 9 hours, kudos to you. But what do you have to say to all those people who say you meditate for 9 hours a day, you're doing probably in the long run more of a disservice than a service, because you're not doing the other things you got to do to wake people up, and for that matter, you're suppressing, among other things, like suppressing your sacred masculine, as he would say by the title of that presentation.
I can totally see that perspective 100%. And for me right now, as I stand Rob Gauthier today, I meditate 0 hours per day. My meditation is when I channel. That is how I get my meditation. So it's limited now to maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours per day, sometimes more. But that's not even really a meditation. That's bringing information through. I completely see that view. I've learned a lot. In the 7 years through my journey of channeling, one thing that was taught to me was the action mechanism. And this is something that I did have a problem with for a lot of period of my life. That's why I got stuck in that depression. I would have these thoughts that maybe this could be exciting, and I never acted on it. And that lack of action caused the inability for me to manifest what I wanted to manifest. So in that way, I completely see where you're going. But in my perception, it's not about knocking on every door and waking people up in that fashion. In my experience, I found that people are only going to wake up when they're ready to wake up. And in some ways, even the people that most people perceive sleeping the deepest, they're still awake, just in their own way. It's a different experience. One thing that Treb and Aridif have really taught to me was to honor the experience of all people, even the people who are hatefully trying to destroy other people's lives, killing, murder, all of those things. Those are horrible, horrible things. And as a person and a human, I have a bit of disgust for that. But as a soul, I understand that that's one experience. And it's not the experience I prefer. It damn sure isn't the experience I want implemented towards me, but it is an experience. And if what Aridif and Treb have taught me about creating your own reality, then I have created a part of that too. I have a purpose in creating what I desire, but if that's in my reality, then there's something in me that helped create that too. It's a responsibility of the entire earth because we're all connected. All of us are souls. Before we're physical beings, we're souls. And if we're all souls and we're all on the earth, that means we're all connected in one way or another. So the person who's killing and the person who's poisoning the food and the waters, they're a part of us. And there's a part of us that is destructive. In every human, there's a part of us that's dark and evil and perhaps not greatly aligned with what we could be aligned with. And that part of all of us is what manifests out into those people who are really trying to mess up things for others and trying to control and lock down. Now, don't get me wrong. I very deeply believe in people speaking out about injustices that are done for them if they're not coming from places of fear. If they're coming from a place of empowerment, if they're coming from a place of a desire to change their reality around them, I highly support that. But the problem is a lot of people haven't figured out how to cut their fear out of that. Like you, when you speak of it, there's a frustration in you, a desire for change, a thought process of how to change it. That is, like you said, the sacred masculine energy, the pushing forward, the desire to move, the desire to drive forward. But a lot of people are either passively pissed about everything and have no answers for solutions, or they become so afraid they wrap themselves up into this horribly negative spiral that goes so far down, it's not helpful or useful for them. As much as I don't want to be poisoned or controlled or told what to do, I also understand that person needs the experience. Treb and Aridif said that the oversoul, the soul itself, the group of all the lives that you've ever been in your past lives, all the lives that you are in your future, comes from a place of 100% neutrality, just like the universe is. The universe carries neutrality only. The individual people who have incarnated on the planet or in the galaxy on a different planet, they're the ones who choose what polarity they have. So when one person stands and says, I'm going to kill a whole race of another planet, the soul doesn't see that as a negative thing. It only sees the experience about it. But in the same sense, the same planet who wants to fight back and get their power back and have that experience of being liberated, that to the soul is just as a valid experience. As a human, it is impossible not to feel angry when you feel suppressed or when you feel pushed down or frustrated that we even live in a system that provides that. But as a soul, we've chosen to come to this planet to do something. And that change is different for all of us. Some of us come to be the bad guy. And then the oversoul doesn't see that experience as a bad guy. It sees it as a useful tool. If we have no bad guys, then we have no way to find our power. And that's what Earth is about. It's not about fighting, killing, destroying each other. It's about finding a new way to integrate power and expansion. What a better way to expand yourself than to come into a system that's so full of limitations and so full of these bad guys that we're able to find a way to put ourselves in a place of power that's so expansive that it lasts throughout the entire oversoul. Every life that we ever are, every life that we were, all of those lives get that experience. So when you're sitting here today and you're frustrated and you're finding thoughts and processes that help the collective by informing, by acting upon your excitements and what you believe is right, you're helping all the souls around you, even if they're the bad guys, because you're giving them that experience through energy. And it's not always a direct payoff, and people can't always see the fruits and the efforts and all the way that the energy interacts. But whether we see it, feel it, believe it or not, we're all connected. We're just as much the bad guy as we are the good guy. In the bad guy's eyes, they'll look at you and say, this guy's telling everybody our secrets. He's an ass, and you're not. You're just doing what you think's right. You're doing what's good for other people. So it's a perspective thing. Each person perceives such a different way that there's no one glove fits all. There's no right, wrong way. To the people who are violent and angry, they're justified in their own minds, in their own perception. Well, I punched that guy at the stoplight today because he was an asshole. And in their mind, they're actually thinking that that's right. So the universe doesn't take sides. It doesn't say, this guy's right, that guy's wrong. It says, hey, guys, free will, go have your experiences. And it's the parts of us, the soul essence of us, that decides which side of the fence we're on. So I understand that idea completely. I completely have experience going through that. But I also see the other side of things, too. I see that one person having their own experience is not just beneficial to them, but it's beneficial to the collective because the energy goes out regardless. Whether someone uses that energy or not is also a free will choice. So I see it on different levels, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, for all those people who are wondering, how exactly can one discipline themselves to meditate for 9 hours in a row? It seems like something, after a while, you're going to be like, this is kind of boring, or after a while, you're going to think, I got other things I got to do in my life besides sit here. How exactly do you discipline yourself to do it, for all those people that are amazed that you're able to pull that off?
Well, I'm not the only person in the world who's done it. In fact, a lot of old ancient people would do more than that. I only really meditated in the conventional sense probably 3 hours out of each day. Once in the morning after I would wake up, once in the afternoon, right after I'd get up from my nap, I would meditate, and then once before I'd go to bed. The other parts of the meditation, the 3 to 6 hours, was just closing my eyes. Now, most people don't consider that a meditation, but to me it was meditative. And the reason I did it is because my life before was so rough emotionally, mentally. I was in such a bad psychology that this new feeling, sensation I would get when I would meditate, being at peace, being calm and serene, that was like a drug. I was addicted. And looking back, I know that I needed that then, but I know how hampering that would be if I tried to implement that in my life now. It wouldn't work. It was part of the process that had to happen in order for me to get where I am now.
Thank you. In regards to the best ways to meditate, it has been said by some that when it comes to meditating, the best way to go is just radiate love from your heart chakra. And, even though that may necessarily be the best way to meditate, because you're spreading love throughout consciousness, and that's what you want to do, especially in a matrix like this, others would say, well, don't do that every time you meditate, because if you do, you're going to get bored, and it's going to get kind of dull. So are you of the opinion, yes, the best way to meditate is to radiate love from your heart chakra to the rest of infinite consciousness, but you shouldn't do that all the time because it's going to become a boring routine?
Well, I think meditation is just like sex. It's different for everyone. Everyone likes their little different ways that they do it, and I think that's what's important. I think if you're not enjoying the meditation, then you're not doing it right, because you're not really, if you don't have the heart for it, meditation is not essential in life at all. In fact, there are people who I've heard who channel now who never meditated to get there. So it's not essential. It's basically a belief system that our world carries, that people who meditate are more spiritual, that people who meditate can quiet their minds. And I needed that little permission. I needed that little little tool in order to get me there, but it's not essential for everyone. There are people who don't meditate at all, who are very conscious and very intelligent and very expansive in their minds and hearts. The heart chakra thing, I think that's great. I think the world could use love. I think love is a very underestimated and very underutilized thing on this planet. But I don't think that works for everybody. There are a lot of people who want to connect to higher knowledge, and higher knowledge is not found in the heart chakra. It's found in the throat chakra and in the third eye chakra and even in the crown. So I would tell everyone, try 1,000 different types of meditation. Try one a week, try one a month, try one a day until you find a part of a meditation that you like, and then build your own. Each person has to have their own connection. To me, all meditation is connecting to yourself. I'm channeling this entity who is extraterrestrial, who lives in the star called Capella. I'm channeling another one who lives in the star called Deneb. Those are the two main entities that I connect to, but they're also parts of myself. They're also, when you look at the soul is a structure that is not like what most people believe it is. There's a thing called an oversoul, and this oversoul is all of your past lives, all of your future lives, all of your now lives put into one. It's like the entire Earth has 144,000 oversouls and then 144,000 twin souls. And basically, every life that's ever existed on Earth, from the first caveman all the way until when the Earth no longer exists, every person who's ever lived on Earth fits into those 144,000 oversouls. So you can imagine one oversoul has trillions of lives. And in that oversoul, there are different parts of you. And what meditation is connecting. Now, I try not to get very deep into this because it's so elaborate. Like a density masterclass is something that I taught that really gets into this stuff if people are interested to learn more. But it's expansive. I've done two-hour speeches that I put out on YouTube, and I only covered maybe 1/1 trillionth of a percent of all of the extensive nature of the universe. But this oversoul carries all of that. And what we live with when we're walking around town, when we're driving our car, when we're eating our food, those parts that we recognize is called our lower fractal consciousness. That is about 10% of what we are. And then there's something called the higher fractalized consciousness. A lot of people in the New Age community call it a higher self. That is the big part of you. That's the part that knows about everything. That's the part that you go to when you're sleeping and dreaming. That's the part of you that goes to you whenever you're experiencing past lives, future lives. All of these entities that you can connect to with channeling, that's found in the higher self. So that's the largest part of what we are, but most humans don't access it. To me, meditation is a direct connection to the higher self, a way to integrate your energy into that higher knowing being. The higher self for each person is truly a version of God. It's something that has the capacity to know everything in this universe that's ever happened, everything about how the universe interacts with one another. That is a deep, extensive knowledge. I believe that Aridif said that the most enlightened and expanded being ever on this planet was only at about 20% into their higher self. So literally their lower fractal consciousness was 20%. The rest of it was higher. So they had to learn to meditate and reach into that higher self. And that's essentially what I've done. I've learned to go from my lower fractal consciousness to the higher fractal consciousness and be able to take that information and energy and redistribute it and learn to connect to Treb and Aridif and Metatron and all these wonderful ETs that have given us knowledge and expansion.
Thank you. And the idea that meditation can become harmful if you make a ritual out of it. I learned that from George Kavaslis, and I tried to, in my private session with him back in the day, asked him to clarify that, because I remember hearing him say that he doesn't meditate as much as he used to, and he also said meditation could be harmful because it can put you in a state of ritual. And he told me, oh, well, since you mentioned that, I probably should have been a little more clear on that. And he did clarify what he meant by that. by saying, well, actually, to be honest with you, I don't remember everything he said in regards to the details of what he exactly meant when he said that meditation can be harmful if you turn it into a ritual. But based on your understanding of what a ritual is, turning something into a ritual, would you agree with the idea, yes, meditation can become harmful and derogatory and negative in your life if you turned it into a ritual?
Well, okay, now it really depends on how you define a ritual. If a ritual is something that you do without purpose or reason, then yes. If a ritual is something that you built for an excitement for your life, then no. I think just like I had said before, how meditation is kind of like sex, that applies for this idea as well. To have sex with someone who you love or care about, to have sex with someone who you are friends with or deeply connected with on a soul level, that can be healthy. It can be good in your relationship. But when you're taking sex to such an extreme where your life is just ruled by it, and you do it, you don't know why you do it because you're filling these holes of emptiness, then no, it's definitely not good for you. Meditation is a great tool, but just like any tool, you get a hammer, you can build a house with it, but you can also break your hand with it. So it's a tool, and the way you use it will determine if it's good for you or not. The 9 hours that I used to do, in retrospect, if I were to try to apply that to my healthy life now, the way I live now, with my health and my mentality and my emotional self, I would say no, it would not be healthy. It would be counterproductive to me. But back then it was very healthy. It was very needed. I was a person who was so pulled away from who I was as a soul that it was most definitely needed. So even in one's life, at 2 points in history, the answer is different for each point. And that's kind of how it is with everybody. And someone who uses it as a ritual of excitement and it turns into a ritual of emptiness, then most definitely they're going to take something beautiful and healthy and turn it into something very ugly and harmful.
Awesome. And well, even though it's not 7:15 yet, I think I'll start taking calls. Let's see. You told me the other 269 is your wife. I did read that email, so I don't have to.
She's just listening. She said no question needed for her. She just wanted to listen.
Okay. So first of all, area code 408. You are on the air. Welcome. What's your name? Where you're from? What's your question?
Hi, my name's Anthony. Hi, Rob. Hi, Karina.
Hey. How you doing, Anthony?
Hey, Anthony.
Well. I was just personally just tuning in. Just wanted to hear the conversation. Loving it.
Oh, glad you loved it. All right. Take care then. Later.
Thank you. You guys have a great day.
You too. All right. I know this person definitely wants to speak because there's a question mark next to the area code. Area code 509. You are on the air. What's your name? Where you're from? What's your question?
I'm from Washington. My name is Derek.
How you doing, Derek?
Hello, Rob.
Hey, Derek, how are you doing, bud?
Great. I was just sitting here listening to you talk about, your steps of meditation and how you got into Jane Roberts, and I'm following in your footsteps. I'm trying to emulate what you got going on right now. I went to a medium once, and she referred me to Seth, Total Validity of the Soul, and I read that. And it helped me with meditation. I mean, I'm doing the binary beats. When I'm outside, I take my shoes off and try to, get my star family near me. But when I'm when I'm meditating in the bed, I basically try to connect with my oversoul and through my guides and everything else. And that's something I've been working on. But a lot of this is attributed to you. All your videos and the different readings that I've had with Aridif, and everything's going great, and I appreciate you and all the things that you're giving to us.
Well, I am very grateful, brother, and something that really needs to be said, and a lot of people come to me and say, I'm trying to reach out to my guides, I'm trying to make contact with my guides. Well, that's the beauty about having those guides. They are already making contact with you. They are already there all the time for your benefit, for your connection, for your ability to learn and to expand. The thing is, most people and humans believe that they are given in the beginning of birth a total disconnection from their spirit. They come into the earth as a disconnected person or a being. That is so untrue. The way that we're born is actually more pure than the way we grow up. Each moment that we're taught by a teacher at school, you have to think inside the box. You have to make 1 + 1 = 2 every time, or you are wrong. When we go to church and we're told, if you don't behave, you will go to hell. If you don't do this, you'll never be able to reincarnate as a human again. All of these different religious teachings pull us away from what we really are. And I'm not bashing religion at all. In fact, Aridif and Treb have said many times that the original concepts for religion are very, very deeply meant to connect people to their self, but the way it was misinterpreted intentionally and unintentionally brought it more to a ritualistic thing or a money thing in a lot of cases. So all of these things to be realized, bringing that excitement to connect to those beings and to connect to the family that you have in the stars, just by having excitement, you're already building the bridge. By knowing that you're able to do that and finding the least resistant path within yourself to do that, any human on this earth can channel if they work on it. And this is the thing. It's just like anything. When you're a radio show host, you live to host your radio show. You live to talk to guests and learn new things and make things interesting and entertaining. When you're a farmer, you learn about the field and the machinery and the crops and all of those things. When you're a channeler, you have to live as a channeler. You have to live knowing that connection's there. You have to live with practicing and knowing that it's there and how to bring it in. So it's just like anything. When you step into a place of excitement and you know that that excitement will be fruitful, then you are increasing your chances to do it hugely. And that's the thing. I know, brother, that you've learned so much from what we've been able to share and teach, but all that stuff's already there inside you. All the information and knowledge in this entire universe is in each and every one of us. It's a part of being a soul. We get that when we come here. We just have to unlearn the things we've learned and teach ourselves. And this is an emotional state, you know. It's not a mental game, and a lot of people try to put it into the mental game. They're like, hey, I need to meditate. This is what I'm being taught from A to Z. I have to sit this way. I have to move my chakra this way. I have to stand sideways and cluck like a chicken for 20 minutes in order to achieve what I desire to achieve. But in truth, it's a feeling. The heart-centered meditation is a meditation of emotion. It's a meditation of feeling yourself in an experience of love. And what is love? Love is the lack of disconnection. It's full connection to all things around you. When you love your neighbor, when you love your dog or your cat, when you love the TV screen in front of you, you're connecting your energy to that. So that love is an emotion. It's a feeling. When we work through in our feelings instead of only in our mind, that's when things start connecting. But when we add the heart and the mind, it becomes more than just the heart and mind separately together. It becomes like a triple energy. It becomes heart, mind, and heart-mind. And those energies are what creates the connection that's already there with your guides to a tangible, exchangeable energy. So just keep reminding yourself of that, brother, and I'm very proud of you for going in there and doing what excites you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much for calling in. Take care now.
Thanks.
Later.
Thank you.
Bye. All right, one more caller here. Area code 703. What's your name? Where you from? What's your question? You were on the air. Or are you just listening? Something tells me you're just listening.
Oh, hello.
Hello. You're on the air, but you're breaking up. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for taking my call. I didn't realize I was on the air. So, Rob, I've been following you and Nora Harold and Wendy Kennedy and the Channel Panel for quite some time, and I just love your work. And my question is, how do you go about learning channeling and devoting all the time that is required to it and still earn a living and still pay the bills? Like, how did you transition into doing this for a living when, you know, you're still having to devote so much time to doing something else for a living?
All right, fair question. Originally, I had a job, and get this, this might be really, really amazing to you, but when I started meditation, I was working as a daycare provider. So I would watch 6 children during the day, and I was able, when it was nap time or cartoon time, I was able to use the closed eye meditation. I would meditate for the hour before they got there, meditate after they went home before my son got home, and then meditate after my son went to bed. And I would use the closed eye technique whenever they weren't around. The universe provided me that job. Unknowingly in my own mind, I didn't place that there, but to create that ability to meditate. Now, when people are conscious of that, it's a much different story. It's a much different thing that they have to do. They have to find a way to be able to integrate themselves into that by finding a job that allows that. And I had a job that allowed that, which gave me that energy. But if I would have knowingly approached it, I would have had to wait to find a job that allowed me the same freedom. So during that transition, that was a big part of it, and I went through the next 4 years doing the same thing. I got to a point where there were so many people contacting me for sessions, I knew that if I said, you know what, instead of doing this for free, I will do it for free and donations. That will help me make up for some money I would lose if I start cutting back my hours of babysitting. So I tried it, and I found out that every time I needed money, someone would donate. So I was showing myself that the universe was supporting the idea of me being a channeler. Finally, it got to the point where I said, there are literally hundreds of emails coming in every month, requests for sessions. I said, if I set up where I can do this as a full-time job, I don't have to babysit anymore, I can dedicate myself to what I'm the most excited about, and that's sharing the message, sharing the information. So just as I have now, I started a structure that allowed everyone from every financial walk of life their ability to connect with Treb and Aridif. I did free sessions, and I did those for 10 to 15 minutes for people who couldn't afford anything or just someone who wanted to try it. Then I gave donation sessions for people who could not afford a price of a full session, and that was limited to a half hour, and they had to share publicly because I figure if you can't give the full amount for what I would ask, then give me something in return, that session to share in the public, which helps other people out. And then I would, for the people who had the money, they would get paid sessions, and that would allow them to keep it private or to keep it public, whatever they wanted to do. And I tried that, and it worked. And I still run off the same basis. I just do it a little differently now. Now I do free sessions via my radio show. Like tonight, after I'm done with this radio show at 9 o'clock, I am going to be bringing in Treb and Aridif on my own radio show for the first of the month radio, where people can call in and ask questions to Treb or Aridif for free. That'll be at 9. And then I also do discounted sessions for half the price of my full for a 20 to 30-minute session. And then I sell sessions for an hour and a half. But the more energy that I put into it, the more financially it came back. And now I'm traveling across the country, doing sessions with these great, great pioneers of channeling like Nora and Wendy, who have been out there for 20-plus years. I'm connecting with all these people. My partner, Kalina, and I have allowed ourselves to be accessible to people and to build these relationships. And now me and her are bringing this to the world. And Kalina is one of the biggest shifts in my channeling. When she came into my life, I had the ability to not focus on all the little details about everything. She came in and took so much of that burden away by taking on that load of work and then giving me all these creative ideas. So it just came out. Each time I jumped in my excitement, just like Treb and Aridif had always taught me, when I step into an excitement and act upon it, I will draw back a larger and bigger part of that excitement for me to manifest more and more of it. And that's all it is. It's a snowball effect. If you really want to take on channeling as your own career, then you have to find a career that allows you to get into the channeling vibration. I know it's a system of money, and it sucks that we all got to pay our bills, but channeling is different for every person. There's a lot of teachers out there who teach channeling. Brad Johnson, Daniel Scranton, they're both really good friends of mine. I myself teach people how to channel. So that's one way, but there's other ways. Just like you heard my story tonight, I get into the hemisync and I learned to meditate, and I just took all these great things and put it into my very own and worked on that connection. So you don't need to pay people for classes, but if you think that that's a better idea, then do it that way. So there's a million different ways to channel, and the best thing about channeling is, and I believe this wholeheartedly, everyone in the world can channel. I've taken on 20 students of channeling classes, and out of those, probably 14 or 15 are channeling. In one form or another, they're channeling. One of them has went public with their channeling, and now they're sharing their work out on YouTube and out across the world and having people from different countries coming to them for these sessions. So it's not impossible to set yourself up. You just have to be able to find that career that allows you the time and money to support yourself for the time that you believe. And it doesn't take 9 hours of meditation. Like I said, there's a few people I know who never meditated, and they still got into channeling because they were excited to see what was on the other side. So it doesn't have to be, hey, I want to channel a being from Sirius. It has to be an excitement. My excitement wasn't to channel ETs. I never even thought of that. I never thought that was possible. My excitement was, I want to see what's on the other side. I want to know more than what my eyes and my brain tell me exist. And that was my ticket in.
Beautiful.
Oh, I got to tell you also, thank you so much for supporting our work. The people who put their love and their heart into our work are the people who make it grow each time. So thank you so much for supporting me and Kalina. Thank you so much for supporting Wendy and Nora, good friends of ours. The more that people put their excitement and ability to see the validity of channeling and what it brings, the more people have access to it. So thank you so much for that, and I love you very much.
I love you too. It's my pleasure, and thank you so much for that very long, detailed explanation. That was more than I expected, and boy, you've just got me excited. I'm sold. And not that you were trying to sell anything, but this is something I'm very excited about, and it's something I just do for the past 2 years almost nonstop as a hobby, and I'm ready to take that next step. So I appreciate all of your guidance in that direction, and I look forward to being in touch with you again soon.
Absolutely, and thank you for your excitement. It's like I couldn't have given such a beautiful, detailed answer without your excitement to ignite that in the first place. So as much
I recognize that.
Yes, absolutely. As much as you put into that, you got back on it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, have a great night. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. And by what's your name? You never gave us your name.
My name is Carrie. I'm in Arlington, Virginia.
Thank you for calling in, Carrie. Lovely conversation. Take care.
Bye,
Namaste.
Good night.
Good night. All right, someone just called in, another person. Area code 832. What's your name? Where you from? What's your question?
Oh, sorry. I was just listening to the show. I didn't mean to get on the air.
That's cool. That's cool. Glad you tuned in as an audience member. Take care now. Enjoy the rest of the show. All right, so moving on with the rest of this show, I guess E.T. channeling, you said anybody can do it. Well, it's one of those easier said than done things. Anybody could be an Akashic Records reader, but we all have it in us because we're all infinite. But some people are more blessed than others. I don't know if blessed is the right word for me to use, but you get my drift. So if we are going to go along with the notion that anybody can become an ET channeler if they first of all realize that they can do it because they're infinite consciousness, then I suppose I need to ask you to silence the skeptics here. After realizing that you're infinite consciousness, that gives you the ability to do it, what comes next in regards to the schooling and the steps needed to take to become an ET channeler?
Good question, a valid point. It's not just knowing that you can do it. That's the first step. That's the biggest step for most of us. The other steps is restriction, resistance. That is what humans do. We do it as a living. We go around and we doubt ourselves, and we doubt those around us, and we doubt how things work. And that brain gets in the way of so much of our ability to feel what we are. So that's really the thing, and that's kind of where I was trying to go earlier, is unlearn the things that you've learned. All of this resistance and restriction are in us all. Now, I won't lie to you, even in my own channeling, I see myself as a very clear channel, and there's a difference. There are a lot of people out there who channel who are not clear. When they're out there putting their information out, there's a lot of themselves left in the channeling. So when they're channeling and they get asked a question, where does this ET guide of mine live? And the channeler has these beliefs. They're like, well, they live over here. And that might not be accurate at all because the channeler's getting in the way. So even those who are open to ET channeling and are able to do it still have resistance. I'm a human. I have resistance in me too. As clear as my channeling is, there's always room for more clarity. There's always more room. You can listen to my sessions from 3 or 4 years ago, before I met Kalina, before I started my intensive journey, and it was good and it was clear. But now the way that it comes through is so much sharper, so much intricate, and so much more expanded. And that's because I, as a human being, have become less restrictive and more expanded. And that's really the truth of this. Those who know that they can channel but can't channel yet, they just have resistance in themselves to get rid of. And it doesn't have to be resistance about channeling. And I hate to say this because I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but a lot of people say, I believe I'm an infinite creator, but they don't. They're really focused in on their lack. They're saying, well, I'm an infinite creator, but I can't seem to do this, but I can't create financial abundance, but there's no buts in consciousness. There's only expansion. There's moving forward. The masculine divine energy that you talked about at the beginning of the show is a representation of how we all have to approach this channeling concept. We have to go forward and not put resistance in our way. And it's great because I've noticed something. As masculine as my energy is, as forward and moving, it also is well balanced with feminine energy. And I think all of us are balanced in feminine and masculine. And I believe that when we find supporting belief systems to our reality, and when we balance our feminine and masculine energy, our driving force as well as our ability to nurture, more importantly than anyone else, ourselves, to nurture our thoughts, our ideas, to really love ourselves. That's where it comes into play. So most people who say, I'm an infinite creator, and they're desiring to channel but not yet channeling, they still have roadblocks emotionally or mentally. And that's not a judgment. It's just what I've experienced with a lot of people. When they're able to really get through their emotional stuff, the majority of them can find. And channeling is so different for each person. It's just like meditation, just like sex. It's different for everyone. What I experience is so different from all the people, even if our channeling is similar, because it's a personal experience. It's something that's within us. So in order for some people, they have to recognize that they're already channeling. There's been a ton of people I've met who bring forward these great, brilliant concepts with clarity and sharpness that's outside of their natural state of being. They're doing that because they're channeling. But because they don't believe in themselves, they're not seeing the channeling that they are already doing. So that in itself is a roadblock for the majority of people who say, I want these guides in me to connect. They're already connecting to that guide. It's a self-realization. And there's a fine line between being skeptical about yourself or beating the crap out of yourself. And in that fine line, you find a lot of leeway. When you stop judging yourself altogether, it's pretty much an endless amount. Even me, with the flow of energy and the channeling that I do, I find myself to be fairly resistant-free compared to most people who I meet. But I still have resistance in myself. I still judge myself. I still think badly of myself when I do something that I think's out of alignment. I'm just as human as anyone else, but I don't dwell on that. I don't sit there and beat myself up when I do something that I don't think is productive or in alignment with me. I realize it in that moment, and I try to let go of it as quick as possible. Sometimes it takes me an hour. Sometimes it takes me a week. Sometimes a year. But normally that would have been multiple-year beating process. So it's just letting go of things like that really allow the energy to come in, realizing that you're already connected and seeing the change of energy when your guides come forward and you bring forward information. Like when you sit here on your radio show, there have been, I'm sure, dozens of times, if you really looked back at all the work you've done, where this flow of ideals that doesn't really even align with your thought process. If you look at yourself and say, wow, this was a really profound moment in the show where I just came with this inspiration and greatness, you were probably channeling a part of your higher self. So that's the concept. It's to see what you're already doing, to know where you are, and to let go of beating yourself up if you can't figure it out.
Yes, and one way to maybe get rid of the blocks in regards to the law of attraction, specifically the idea of using the law of attraction to make more money. It's one reason some people have trouble doing that, using the law of attraction to make a lot of extra money, is because something happened in their past life that made them think negatively of money, so they have a subconscious block in their mind. And one way to clear that is to listen to some sort of audio that will have some sort of subliminal, for lack of a better phrase, tone to it, which will eliminate the subconscious block in your mind, which will allow the law of attraction abilities to manifest. Now, can the same be true of learning how to become a psychic ET channeler? And if so, what kind of things would you have to listen to eliminate the blocks in your mind that are keeping you from being able to do it?
Well, I think that that's one tool of many tools to use to get out of those subconscious blocks. But for me, the one thing that I've seen work for tons of people on subconscious, there's this thing that Aridif, the Ancient Pleiadian, very technical, very wise being, it's a sixth density consciousness, he brought forward this information to us, and it was originally built by Treb. Treb shared with us how to find belief systems in ourselves that are limited. So by doing that, Aridif added to that, and he made this 10-step process, and it's called the 10 Steps to Belief System Change. This is a 10-step process that makes you aware of your unconscious and subconscious belief systems that you didn't even know that you had. And a lot of them are to work with the ones that you're already aware of, but the steps also bring that out. I think that's a great tool, and that's why Kalina had taken these steps. She wrote them down. She had built a PDF thing so you can go through all of them, and it's so powerful of a tool, we give that away for free for everybody because we believe with this tool in the world, it can only be a better place. It can only help people. So that's what I would suggest when it comes to desire of wanting to be ET channeler or just to learn how you can build more financial abundance in your life. Take these 10 steps out and work them. And they're very simple. Anyone can do them. You got a worksheet that walks you through the steps, but once you remember the steps, once you learn them, like you would a speech or a song, once you know them and feel them, you can literally find yourself doing this dozens of times a day. A thought process comes up that makes you feel emotionally awkward or different, and you lock into it, you break it down, you follow the 10 steps, and at the end of it, you release a ton of resistance. I think that's probably the greatest tool that I'm aware of that's come through my channeling. But because I'm a channeler, I used to have beliefs that I wouldn't look into other people's teachings because I wanted to make sure what was coming in was clear and was my own. But once I proved that to myself, and once I started working with other channelers on events and stuff like that, I had to start looking into other. And I don't follow other people's channeling at all, but the little bit of channeling I do watch from other channelers, I still have never found a better tool or use for getting through your belief systems or getting through. Now, one thing, too, that I want to mention when you bring up the past life thing, it's very interesting. Aridif has given us a great perception of how past lives, future lives really work. Time that we experience is linear, but that's not how time truly exists. Everything's in the now moment. So even the past life that you were 1,000 years ago is happening right now. And if that's the case, then the past lives that are affecting us in the way that you're talking about, that gives us the subconscious or energetic blocks, don't always have to be there. More times than not, it's usually not these past lives that come into our reality and block something. It's something that we are doing in this life is so similar to that life that it's linking the two lives. Existence and expansion is passed between the two. So let's use an example. Let's say that I myself am connecting to a life from 500 years ago where a guy was so rich and so powerful by being crooked that he killed a bunch of people, and that energy is blocking my ability to make abundance now. What is the common denominator? There has to be at least something that links those two lives together. So evaluating that and seeing what interest or what thing, and that's hard because then you have to look at that past life and know that past life, and that's difficult for most people who don't have psychic intuition or ability to really look at. But when you become aware of a past life that's blocking something now, find the common denominator. So let's say after examining that past life thoroughly and examining this life, I find that the common denominator was something to the effect of wanting to be rich and famous. And in both lives, I wanted to be rich and famous. So those energies link those lives together. So what do I have to do to cut the ties between the life? We have to see that they're separate lives. We have to know that the actions of that past life are not the actions that when I want to become rich and famous in this life, it's because I desire to be a better person. I desire the concept that I know I am worth being rich and famous. And in that past life, it was all for greed. So there's not as much in common as I thought in the first place. That helps cut that past life from you. That realization that little bit of energy that was similar between both things wasn't as important as it was. It helps separate that. So a lot of the times you can sever those past lives. Something that's so interesting that I had never thought before it was brought forward by Treb Bor was the idea that your past lives aren't really your past lives. They're just the energetic links. So if I were to get a past life reading from a regression or an Akashic record reader today that says you were so-and-so 300 years ago in this area of the world, I could come back 1 year later when I am completely changed, when my thoughts, my ideas, my mindset were completely changed. That life is no longer my past life. 300 years ago, I'm a different person in a different part of the world. How can that happen? Well, it's not a finite thing. Just like your decisions in every moment pave the path for who you are in the next moment, that's the same with past lives and future lives. When you hear someone talk about probable future incarnations, it's the same way with your past incarnations. It's a big wave of probabilities on both sides, and the way you draw your line from you to your past and you to your future is a common link of energy. Just like when you find that past life thing that links you, that's the same in your future. So most of the time when you find something in your future or past, it's very in tune or common theme of something that either is going on in your life or has went on in this life. That's what links you. So changing your mindset, changing beliefs, changing your energy can change your future and your past. It's not all the same. And this is a very deep concept. It's very hard for a lot of people to grasp because they're so used to working with a linear model of time that when you go through it and you experience all of those things, you can see that changing you now changes what your past was. Changing you now changes what your future. And it's not really a past and future thing. It's a now thing. So I think that's important for us to realize as we try to sever our connection to the negative past experiences. I think that in itself could be a tool for a lot of people to use.
There's a little bit of a new concept that I don't think I've heard before, that changing your lifestyle in the present could change what your past life was in the quote-unquote past. That is something that certainly people should research a little further. But just so you know, we have 14 minutes and 25 seconds left in the live feed, and there is another caller here in the queue. If they want to speak, they can now. Area code 253, you are on the air. What's your name, where you're from, what's your question?
Oh, I'm just listening.
Oh,
I like to
okay.
listen on my phone.
All right, that's
Sorry.
cool. Take care. Later. All right, so how can we end this show? So I guess we'll talk a little bit now in the last 14 minutes we got about your two primary contacts. We'd love to talk about all the other contacts that you spoken to, but we don't have enough time here. We could go a little past 2 hours if you need to finish a thought or something. Let's try to keep this to 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern as the end time. Treb and Aridif, you did speak about them a little bit in passing, but in regards to what dimension or density, whichever word you want to use, of what consciousness they are, I think you said one of them is sixth density, and tell us a little bit about what that life is like, sixth density life, and what that means for the entity in question and the other entity, whichever one. Is he also sixth density, or is he another density? And tell us what that kind of density, like we well know about what fourth density is like from when Tolek talked about that, Andromeda Council contacted Tolek with Alfred Weber, that interview back in 2011, but now we're talking like sixth density and maybe some others. So why don't you enlighten us on what life is like for those entities that you communicate with and the densities that they're from.
Absolutely. Let's hit Treb first, because Treb is my original connection. He is the closest being to me, the one that's most linked in my perception. Treb is an entity who is fifth density consciousness. He comes from the star called Capella. What Treb is, now this is something that's has been very controversial in the entirety of my channeling. Treb is a benevolent hybrid reptilian human. So he's part reptilian and part human, and it's not the reptilians that we're aware of that are really a pain in the ass of mankind. They're not the kind that really dig into humans, and it's another type of reptilian being. These reptilians came from Capella, and they were originated from a race that's called the Nihal. And the Nihal is basically a version of the future humans that come from the Beta Leporis star. These entities know about reptilians. They know how the galaxy perceives reptilians as negative and malevolent and horrible beings. So they create a hybrid race called the Yits, or at least that's what we call them as humans. And that was a nickname given by a dear friend. So this entity, Treb, is a benevolent reptilian human hybrid, and he is an amazing being. They're very large beings. They're about 7.5 foot tall. They have green-blue skin, big purple eyes, red dots. They have tails that go down to about mid-leg. They're a very interesting race, and they're very different from a lot of other races. Fifth density consciousness is so huge and so expansive. Now, the density levels that Treb has taught, and this is something that I spent a lot of time teaching, the density master class. It's something that I've shared free with the public because it's important to know how our universe works. if you want to understand fifth density, go there. But if you want the short version, fifth density is the exploration of wisdom. Fourth density, the exploration of the heart. Now, fourth density, fifth density, and sixth density evolve in two separate pathways. One pathway of love is love for all that are around you. These are what we call type 1 entities. They are entities who see themselves as part of all. They see the oneness that they are. They behave in a manner of knowing that they are part of one. So they know what they do affects all things around them, and what others do affect all things around them too. So they look above them. They look in higher densities for inspiration and wisdom, and they look below and distribute that wisdom out to the lower because they're a part of one. They're a circuit. They also would never step on the toes of the free will of any being in this galaxy, in the universe. They would never, even a lot of people like the idea of E.T. saving us, coming down and fighting wars and getting rid of the bad guys, but type 1s would never do that because they would not disrespect your creation as an infinite creator being. They would not step in the way of your free will to co-create drama or wars with other races. So these beings are expansive, they're knowledgeable. Now, the other way to evolve in fourth, fifth, or sixth density, well, let's say fourth density in the heart, they are type 2 entities. And these entities are a spectrum, a whole level of different entities. Some of them are very loving and very benevolent. They love humanity. They want to help. But they will step in the way of our free will. Those same entities that we love the ideas of, fighting wars for us, protecting us from malevolent entities, that can be a type 2 entity. But on the other side of the type 2 spectrum is the malevolent beings, the ones who love to step on the free will of everyone. They only see the oneness of them or their own race. They cannot fully see the integration of all things that are, and they mostly look below them. And they look below them energetically or dimensionally because that gives them the opportunity to stand above all things. If they look above them, they really don't look upward because there's nothing above them to look at. An entity in the fifth density cannot look into the sixth density unless they find a bridge and a connection. Just like when we meditate, we can go into higher densities. They don't connect to themselves enough to be able to do that. So they're only looking to impose their will on lower beings. For the most part, even the ones who are benevolent have some of that in them. So these are the two pathways of fourth, fifth, and sixth densities. Now, fifth density is the exploration of wisdom. Treb and his race are fully knowledgeable about how the universe works. They're knowledgeable about how their consciousness works. An example is that they get into a spaceship and they can go to Earth instantly. If they wanted to visit Earth and come down, they could come to Earth instantly. And they could do that because they know that they're a part of all that is. They have integrated their own consciousness into the technology and are able to essentially travel without limitations of time or space. Their consciousness has evolved that much where they co-create with the technology to move across. They can also manifest instantly. So let's say one of the yits decide, hey, I would like to have a turkey sandwich, and they don't eat food, but I'm just giving it for example. Instantly they would have it. They can make the molecules around them instantly manifest what they desire. A turkey sandwich would, well, let's say a glass of water, H2O, hydrogen, oxygen. They could take the hydrogen and oxygen out and instantly manifest the water there. So they are highly advanced beings. They are interested in the fifth density to evolve, to understand all the wisdom that there is to know in this galaxy. Sixth density. Now, this is Aridif, the Ancient Pleiadian, the Denebian entities. This entity is different than Treb. Even though it's like Treb's guide, they are very short. Like Treb's race, 7.5 foot. Aridif race is about 3.5 foot. So they're very short. Again, large purple eyes, but they have a different face. They're very humanoid looking, but they have very blue skin. And they're very skinny and thin and small. They're very wise. Now, sixth density is the combination of wisdom and love. They're taking both things below, combining it, making something bigger. These are the masters of the universe. They are one step away from going out of physical reality as an oversoul or a planetary consciousness. These beings can go into another universe with a thought in their mind. They can go through matrix levels, dimension levels with a thought. They don't need technology. They are more of manifestors than the fifth density beings. They don't just have galactic knowledge. That's not their graduation point in the sixth density. Their graduation point is physical reality, period. So when they get to the end of their evolution in sixth density, they are complete masters of the universe. These are the entities that can think a thought and make it happen. There are still limitations in the fifth density when it comes to manifestation, like Treb has to have a spaceship. He has to integrate himself into consciousness with the technology in order to make it do all these great things. Aridif can just think the thought and be across the universe in one thought. So there is a great difference in the amount of consciousness. This is very deeply covered in the Density Masterclass, and I think anyone who's interested should do that. But back to Treb for a minute. If you really want to know about Treb, if you really want to know about his race, you can go to the website that we've got, yit-whisper.com. You can go to the for sale sign and go to the book, but there's a free PDF download, and it's free for anybody. Anybody who wants to download it for free can go to the website and download that book for free. It's called Benevolent Hybrid Reptilian Humans, and it's written by myself and a Brazilian author named Jefferson Biscardi, who's also worked with people like Brad Johnson and Sean Swanson, also ET channelers. This guy connects to me and asks Treb questions about his race. He talks to other members of Treb's race. He talks to Aridif. That was the first time ever introduced to Aridif was in this book. This book was written in 2011 and carries a great validity of who Treb is, who Treb's race is, how they interact with other races, and what fifth dimensional living or fifth density living is in this universe. So encompassing that idea, I think if you really want to know about that, you should check that book out. That book will tell you more about Treb and his race and the fifth density beings. And it also gives you an opportunity to see reptilian beings outside of being evil. Treb's race is a type 1. They are completely connected. They would never step on the free will of other people. But when you ask Treb about reptilians, he will openly admit to you that about 90% of all reptilians in this galaxy are negative beings, or at least they're type 2 beings. So he's very honest and open about the whole reptilian thing. It's very interesting, and a lot of people have a lot of fear around reptilians, but reptilians are one archetype in this galaxy. That would be like coming to Earth and pointing out all the white people and saying, every white person on this planet is horrible. They do this, that, and that. It's to look at reptilians and say all reptilians are evil. It's a form of galactic racism. And this is what the Nihal brought forward, and I channeled the Nihal Collective, a version of the future humans, who further elaborated on the idea that they created Treb's race as a co-creation to show the galaxy, to show Earth more than anything, that not all reptilian entities are bad. Not all of any one thing is bad. When you think in those terms, as black and white as they are, that can be a real negative thing. Now, I know it's getting close to 8, brother. I know that we're getting close. Is it all right real quick to let everybody know about where my website is and to let them know how to tune into my radio show tonight?
Go right ahead.
All right. My website is yit-whisper.com. It's just like it's spelled, E-T-Whisper, WHISPERER.com. You can also go to trebchanneling.com, T-R-E-B, and then the word channeling with 2 N's. Or you can go to Metatron's Center. And if you look up all those, they take you to the same site for right now until we build new sites. But it'll take you. And we've got hundreds of hours of free videos. We have a bunch of audio archives, and we have a bunch of free stuff on our site. We also have paid material. That's what keeps this running, our ability to continue sharing publicly free material. But tonight, we are having a call-in radio show where if you want to talk to Treb or Aridif in 1 hour from now, you can go to Facebook and type in the words Enlightenment Evolution Hour. That's our page. The link will be at that page in just 10 or 15 minutes from now. You click on that link or call the number on the post at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can ask Treb or Aridif whatever you want. I'm going to be channeling for an hour with my partner, Kalina Angel. She will take your calls, and Treb and Aridif will answer any question any of you guys have, hands down. We want to give back to the collective. We want to help you guys bring forward the information. So we do this for free every month, first Wednesday of each month. Check out the website, a bunch of cool stuff. Thank you so much, brother, for having me on. It's been a pleasure. I love your energy. I love what you do for humanity by sharing your truth and sharing your heart. Uh-oh. Are you there?
Oh, yeah, here I am. This happened last week again where the unmute button took forever to unmute at the end of the show. I don't know why that happened.
Understand.
Well, the live feed
is Talk too.
yeah, the live feed is off, but I'll tell you this anyways, the same thing I tell all my guests. I love having you as a guest. You are a fascinating individual, and I have no doubt, and by the way, just so you know, I'm not going to be able to listen to your show at 9 o'clock tonight. I do have some other obligations, but I will try to listen to a future show. But that being said, you are a fascinating individual, and I have no doubt that I could have you on as a guest another time. But one of my goals with this radio show is to get as many different guests on as possible before giving any one specific guest double dips, because I feel that is the fairest, most impartial, and most informative way of doing a radio show that seeks to expose the true and false nature of reality. And that means, Rob, I probably will not be asking you to come on my show again, but only because I need to give hundreds upon thousands of other fascinating individuals the chance to have some glory on my radio show. But I promise you, I will make... You think that's a very... Yeah, a lot of the trolls like to pick on me for saying that, always saying things like, what a douchebag, well, telling guests you won't have him on.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's beautiful.
Oh, well, I'm glad you said that. Well, I will make sure that this one and only interview that I probably have with you will get spread like wildfire. I'll upload it to YouTube, make sure I put it on some social media networks so the word gets out. And, well, I certainly learned a lot of things, a few new things, like that whole thing about like your past lives are not always set in stone and may change. That's kind of a new concept for me. I'll definitely want to maybe ask some Akashic Records readers about that, the truth value of that idea. But like I said, pleasure having you on. I wish you luck. Good luck on your show today. Good luck on your future endeavors. Well, have a safe trek throughout infinite consciousness.
Thank you, brother, and the same to you. Congratulations with your show and the platform idea of sharing with all those different mindsets and consciousness is beautiful, brother. Thank you so much for having me be a part of that.
Thank you for being a guest. All right, namaste. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
So, folks, that is the end of this show. Next week on the show, I will, another name I can't seem to pronounce, Yalara Khalsa, Ylara, and last name Khalsa, Khalsa. I believe she was a vendor at the Mount Shasta conference that I was at. Flower of Life, something like that is her website. Very interesting guest indeed, I'm sure. Not a household name, but has a lot of wisdom and information to sell, just like a lot of vendors at conferences do. Always want to not just get the speakers of the conferences, get the vendors as well. Very interesting folks those vendors can be. So, with that being said, this is Andrew Fisher signing off from Nature of Reality Radio. Enjoys the rest of your trek throughout infinite consciousness, everybody. Namaste.